Hello everyone and welcome back to another Stormworks Search and Destroy Weapons DLC video. Now in this video we're going to be doing a full tutorial on how to build every single gun with this new Weapons DLC update. We're going to break it down into 4 different categories. I'm going to show you how you can build autocannons, how you can use the belts, how you can actually reload your drums, and you can do it automatically. And we're going to go through how to use the cannons, the breech loading, the manual loading, and all different types of things there. I'm also going to show you how to go and use the missiles. And lastly, we're going to have a look at the reloading system for those drums, as I said a few minutes ago. So let's get straight into it and let's get started. So to start off with, we've got a very simple little base here with a seat and 2 pivots. Now of course 90% of the time when you're creating your weapons, you probably are going to be putting them on some type of pivot, either to rotate them or to pitch them. So for the purpose of this video, we are going to be keeping them on pivots to show you guys how that works. Now when it comes to the first thing we're going to be looking at, is going to be autocannons. Now autocannons come in 3 different sizes. You can start with a very small one. You can go all the way up to a medium size or heavy autocannon, and then lastly we've also got the large rotary autocannon. Okay, so 3 different types of autocannons. Now they all work exactly the same in terms of logic, exactly the same in terms of setup and how they use the belts and the drums. They all work exactly the same. Of course they use different rounds, but in terms of how you're building it, they are all the same. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to stay with a light autocannon. That way I can show you how they work a little bit more easy. Now the first thing you need to be aware of when you're playing with these new pieces is that most of these guns have got an area where the shells come out of. As you can see here, there is a little area where the shell comes out of. You cannot build on top of this. So for example, if I try and build here, it will not let me build over that area. So that's just something to take into mind here. Along with that, we have a 3x1 area where we can either connect a drum mag or we can connect belts. Now, with the autocannons, you do not need any type of feeder system. They will automatically go and pull their rounds as soon as you start firing the gun itself. Now, when it comes in terms of belts, we have a bunch of different pieces. We firstly have a corner piece. We also have a junction piece. We also are going to have a connector piece. We're going to also have a flat corner piece. We're also going to have a feeder. And we're going to have a straight piece, and we'll go through every one of these pieces right now. Now in terms of the straight piece and the corner piece, and the corner piece here, which is a big 90-degree piece, they all work very straightforward. You literally connect them on, and there's no issues in terms of directions or anything like that you need to worry about. You can just simply connect them like this. So that's the corner piece, the straight piece, and also this 90-degree piece. Now what about the junction piece? Now the junction piece allows you to go and connect 2 pieces up together. So for example, if we wanted to connect something over here, we could possibly go and connect a drum on the side and also a drum on the side. Now the junction pieces work with a node in between them. This allows the round to either come from the left or to come from the right. Okay, now the easiest way for you to go and set up a junction piece would be probably to get a threshold gate, check the ammo count of one drum. When the ammo count is empty, then go and switch over to the second drum mag. Okay, so very simple how to use the junction pieces. Now along with that, we have 2 other pieces. Now these pieces are the connectors and the feeders. This is the only time when you're going to need to use the feeder is if you are going to use the connector. The connector allows you to transfer ammo from 2 different bodies. So for example, you can see this is in gray. My gun's currently in gray here. That's because it's a different body to my actual build area or to my base here. So there would be no way for us to actually go and send rounds across unless we were to use the connector piece. Now we're going to go into the connector piece in a few minutes, and I'll show you guys how you can build a little connector in a few minutes. Let's carry on with this. Now, if we wanted to go and add a drum mag onto this, because this is where the rounds are, we have 3 different options. We have the large, the medium, and the small. Obviously, each one of them carry a different amount of rounds, so it depends on how many rounds you're looking for. Let's use the small one for our example. Now we can connect the small one onto our actual belt here if we wanted to, or we could connect it directly onto our gun. You do not need to have any feeders or anything to connect it. It can self-load itself. Okay. Now all of the drum mags will spawn unloaded. You need to click onto them and make sure you load them with the right type of round. We have kinetic, high explosive, fragmentation, and armor piercing, and lastly incendiary rounds. Now, depending on what type of cannon you're using, make sure you change the caliber. Of course, we're using a light autocannon, so we're going to leave it on light autocannon. If you're using a rotary, change it to rotary. If you're using heavy, change it to heavy. If you do not change this, your gun will not fire and it will not work. Great. So now that we've got the autocannon on, we've got a drum mag on, the last thing you need to do is have a look at the nodes. Now with these guns, there's not much to it. There is an ammo count on the drum, there is a loaded, and there is a fire. Okay, so there's pretty much 3 nodes that we need to worry about. You can of course connect a dial over to the ammo count to read how many ammo you have. You can connect a light or an indicator to see if your gun is loaded or not loaded. And then lastly, to fire it, you can either use maybe a push button, toggle button, you could use one on your seat, or you could use the left mouse click. I personally like using the left mouse click. It's just very easy to go and use that. Another thing you need to pay attention of is by default, the seat has the trigger connected to toggle. I like to have it on push. Obviously, if you leave it on toggle, you click it once, it's just going to continue firing. Or if you put on push, every time you left click on your mouse or use spacebar, it will fire around. Now I have gone into my settings and I have gone and changed my spacebar, which is the default fire, over to my left click. Okay, so you can see here my trigger is bound to my left mouse button. Makes it much easier when you're working with this. Lastly, double check to see you've got electricity on your autocannons. Autocannons do require electricity. Let's go and spawn that in and let's see if it's going to work. So we can jump on our seat here, we can obviously move it around if we want to, and we can go and fire some rounds downrange. Very straightforward and very simple. You can see the rounds coming out of the drum here, and you can see the shells coming out. Great. So now we know how the autocannons work. They all work exactly the same. How would you go and reload them from different bodies? Well, that's where you can go and use some drums and you can use the connector pieces. So let's go and make an example here. So for our example, we're going to use, let's go and use maybe a slider because that's the what I would think would be the most popular. So let's go and add that on there and let's get some track pieces. And let's say that we're going to have a drum mag at the end of this, like so, and we're going to have another drum mag over here. So we're going to use this piece to go and push it to connect these two together. Imagine that this is your gun and inside your hull you might have some extra ammunition that you want to go and reload it with. So we're going to start by having this drum mag completely empty and we're going to have this drum mag with some ammo on it. We're then going to go and grab some connector pieces. Make sure you get the one for the autocannon, and we're going to add a connector piece on this side, over here, and one on this side. But before we do that, we need some way to push the rounds from one side to the other side. Okay, you'll need some way of doing that, and that's where you can use the feeder. Okay, now the feeder will actually go and send rounds. Make sure once again you're using the autocannon feeder here. Okay, so we're going to be transferring rounds from this drum mag on my left to the right. So you want to make sure you add a feeder on there. Now when you place the feeder down, keep an eye on the little arrow on the little motor. It needs to face away from where you're sending it from. So we're sending it from this drum mag into here. So the arrow needs to be facing where we're sending it. Now you can get a connector piece over here, and you can get a connector piece over here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and get a keypad. And we're going to move this drum along the rail here, and we're going to start loading it. So, of course, you need some electricity on all these components, which I'm going to do right now. We're also going to go and look at the nodes. Now, on the nodes, we of course have ammo, and we have ammo. We've got connected, connected, and then we've also got feed. This will start a motor to start sending the rounds or transferring the rounds from this drum through the feed, through the connector, into this connector, into this drum. Okay, so this is the little motor that works. We also have a little feed successful if you want to use it. Now I'm actually going to connect this connected button over to my motor. That means that once this gets connected to this, it will automatically start the motor, which will start sending rounds across. Cool, so once we have that, I'm going to connect my keypad to obviously move this across. Make sure I've got electricity, which I do have. Make sure that my drum mags are loaded. This one is empty, as you can see here, and let's go and test this and see if we can reload this empty drum mag. Okay, so currently this has got ammo, this one doesn't. These are two completely separate bodies. Let's go and press a 1 here. It gets connected, it starts sending its rounds across. This is now loaded, if we disconnect this by pressing a -1 in, you can see it stops the motor. This round is now full and this ammo drum is empty. So this is how you can automate the reloading process instead of you obviously going up to it, pressing E and transferring the ammo manually. Okay, so that's a nice little cool way of how you can go and do it. Very important if you don't want to go out onto your deck or go underneath your helicopter or plane to go and do manual reloading. Great. So now that we've got that done and we've had a look at how to build autocannons and how we can do the reloading process. Well, how does it work when we work at cannons? Well, very similar actually. Let's go and delete all these things that we don't need anymore. So, with the cannons, once again, we have a number of different amount of cannons that we can play with. We have an artillery cannon, which is quite large. We also have the big Bertha cannon, which is even larger. It's absolutely ginormous. Let's go and find it. There he is. Absolutely huge. And then lastly, we have the battle cannon. This is the most common cannon I think everyone's probably going to be using on their tanks and so on and so forth. So once again, for the purpose of this video, let's go and use it and let's go and load it. So let's delete the larger cannons. Now all the cannons work exactly the same way, okay? You'll notice that when you go into the logic part of them, they have a trigger, which is quite straightforward, so let's connect that over to our trigger. They have a loaded and they have open breech. Now you have to open the breech in order to go and actually put rounds inside here. Now, probably thinking, well, that's fine, I can just go and put some belts on here. Well, you could, but the problem is that when you add the belts on, there is no way to actually go and feed ammo inside there. So for example, if I go and add this on now, there's no way for this to go and feed it, okay? And that's where you need a feeder. So let's go and grab a feeder. So we can go and grab the feeder for the battle cannon. We can go and add it on our creation just over here. Make sure that you have the arrows pointing in the correct way. You also have the shells pointing in the correct way. Okay, you can see here we have the shell facing left. Make sure your feeder has got the shell facing left. And it also has your feeder, the middle motor, facing towards the gun, as I've done right now. Now, after that, you can then go and add your belts. Now, you can use everything from the corner pieces to the straight pieces. It's completely up to you on which one you would like to use here. Obviously, make sure you choose the right one for your gun. Battle cannon corner outer, perfect. Let's use this one today, and make sure you've lined it up correctly, okay, like I've done right now. Great. When you've gone and done that, you can also select on these belts and you can go and tell the system that they've got rounds in them. Once again, kinetic, high explosive, fragmentation, armor piercing, or incendiary. Completely up to you. You can do the same thing on your actual feeder. All of these can hold rounds, okay? Now, you can also manually load this gun if you really wanted to. It is completely up to you, okay? Completely up to you on how you want to manage this. Now, in terms of the logic that you're going to need to automate this process, I've got a controller that I already have built. It's ready on the workshop. You guys can go and check it out and use it. It is in the examples that I've gone and posted already on the workshop for you. Let's go very basic today. Let's just use some push buttons. Okay, let's understand this process and how it works. So we're going to have one to go and open the breech, and we're going to have another one that goes and feeds the breech. Okay, so we're going to have one, once again, that opens the breech and one that feeds the motor. We're going to go to our electricity, connect up our buttons and our actual little feeder. Your cannon itself does not need any electricity. We've already got our trigger connected, so I'm not really going to worry about the trigger. Let's go and spawn this in and let's go and see if we can get this gun working. Now by default, you'll notice there is no rounds in here. If I click on fire, nothing happens. So we're going to open the breech, then we're going to go and load a round, and we're going to close the breech. It is now loaded and we can now fire a round. For example, over here, fire. And you can see we've now fired a round. Okay. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you could go and obviously pick up the gun itself, and we could maybe use a toggle button instead. So we could do this completely manually if we wanted to. So let's go and delete all of this. Let's go and grab a belt and let's go and manually load this. So battle cannon, let's put a few of these down on the ground here. Let's change these buttons over to maybe a toggle button to make it easier for ourselves. And let's go and say that we've got some rounds in here. So I'll put some kinetic rounds today. Connect my toggle button open to my open breech. Connect my electricity over to my push button or toggle button. And let's go and test this now. So you can see nothing is loaded in here. If we press the toggle button, it goes and opens the breach. We can pick up a round, we can load it, we can close the breach, go to our gun and fire it. Okay, so that's how you can do a manual loading system. Now, if you wanted to get some type of automatic system, you can do the same thing as we did earlier, where you can go and actually use the connectors. So let's go through that again, and I'll show you guys how you could do that. So we're going to go over here. We're going to add some, let's do some straight pieces like that. Let's go and maybe get a feeder. Make sure you get the one for the battle cannon. Make sure it is facing the correct way. Okay, so you can see there, and it also faces towards where you want to load. Lastly, we're going to get a connector. So let's go and get a battle cannon connector piece. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Make sure it's facing the right way. You can see there I actually have it the wrong way. And we're going to place that on there, like so. And we're going to place another one here. Let's grab some more empty pieces and we're going to push them over here. Like so, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now let's go and say that this one has got ammo inside it. So kinetic, 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 kinetic. These ones are empty, as you guys can see. You can actually load the connector if you wanted to by default, which is pretty cool, I think. Let's go and do some logic now. So electricity to the feeder. And we're going to say, hey, when this is connected, start feeding ammo, just like we did earlier on. Let's go and spawn it in. You can see on the right here, these are all loaded. Okay, this is obviously a different body in comparison to this one, which is completely empty. Let's go and put a 1 here, and it should start transferring the rounds across, as you can see there. So once again, you can completely automate your reloading process if you want to, which is pretty cool, I think. And before we continue, the next thing we need to discuss is that all of the weapons, whether they're cannons or they're autocannons, all have barrel extensions. Now you'll notice here we've got all the different extensions. This can be used for autocannons and also for your battle cannons, bertha cannons, and so on. Now if you add these on, so for example, we've got our battle cannon here, let's go and add on the extension. These will increase the accuracy of the round. Now of course these do weigh quite a bit. As you can see, they weigh 40 each. For example, for the battle cannon, if you're talking about the large extension barrel, it's 10. Now, as soon as you add these on, your accuracy does increase, which means you get a much more accurate round in comparison to not having any of these on. Okay, so for example, let's go and load this. Let's go and close it off. And if we were to go and aim this, it is extremely accurate as to where it is pointing. Let's just wait a few seconds for this to stop swaying. Okay, and let's go and fire it now. It is extremely accurate in comparison to not having any of these barrel extensions. Great, let's go on to the last piece that we have of the new weapon modules. The last piece we have in terms of guns and cannons and things are going to be the new rockets or missiles, whatever you want to call them, okay? You can find them in your inventory just over here and you can place them down. They're very straightforward, they're completely self-contained. You don't need to actually build anything extra on them. No reloading systems, you can't reload these, they are single use, and that's it. Well, how do you actually go and fire them? Well, if I was to go and connect my mouse button over to all of these right now and I was to go and fire them, you will notice that we're going to shoot one rocket from each one at the same time, like that. And you know what happened? It went and blew up in my face, which you don't want, of course. You want a nice way to singly go and fire one rocket at a time. Now actually, you don't need any magic logic here. There's actually built-in logic on these rockets already. You can say, hey, you know what, my trigger is going to start by only firing the first rocket. Then this actually has a trigger pass through. When all the rockets are finished in this tube, then send this trigger through to the next one. And you can repeat that process, trigger pass through, go here, trigger pass through, go here, trigger pass through, go here, trigger pass through, go from here to here. Okay, so it's just going there, 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 and going in a little bit of a maze. That's all you need. We obviously have a loaded option if we want to. You can't change any of the settings on these rockets. We can now go over to our seat, hold down left click, and it's now going to fire one rocket at a time. Finish that tube, move on to the next one. Finish that tube, move on to the next one. And it's going to repeat that process over and over and over again. And you can see those rockets going, really going, and it's starting to explode against that mountain over there. Fantastic. So guys, that is all the new modular weapons, or cannons at least, and guns, and how to use them. Of course, we do also have some other pieces like the EMPs and also the bombs and the warheads that you can also go and create, but we're going to do another video covering those. Okay, and we're going to go into a little more detail, maybe even do some guided rockets, some guided bombs. Let me know guys in the comments below if you want to see a video on how to make some guided bombs and some guided rockets. I'd love to hear you guys comment on what you think about that. But guys, that's pretty much about it for this little tutorial. Hopefully it has helped you build your own guns here in Stormworks. And a lot of players have been confused since the release, which is only a few hours ago, and they've been wondering how to go and build it. And hopefully this tutorial has provided you with that information. So guys, if you have enjoyed it, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't and you don't want to miss any of my future content, and make sure you hit a little bell icon to be notified as soon as the content gets released. And until the next one, we will see you then.